Hey Josh, how's it going?
Hey, Elliot, I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, first, I want to welcome everybody to the 9 to 5 podcast. We're happy that you're here. And today we're going to talk about raising a fire conscious family. So maybe I'll start off by saying what happens when you don't just pursue financial independence for yourself, but you raise your kids with that mindset too. So today we're going to try and dive into what it means to build a fire conscious family, teaching money, values, and freedom across different generations.
I'm excited to talk about this one, Elliot. We've probably had some one off conversations here and there, just talking about the different stages of life that we're in. So, my kids are in their early 20s. We've been through a lot of the conversations regarding money. We've tried a lot of the things at an early age to instill good values. And your kids are at a completely different stage where you're at the very, probably the start of that, where your kids are very young and you're just trying to instill some of that into them. So I think it'll be a nice contrast as we talk through maybe what worked for me, what hasn't, at least at this stage in my kids' lives. And yeah, this should be fun.
I had this conversation with my daughter this morning in the car drop off line at school. Is Are you familiar with the concept of the bank of mom and dad?
Yeah, of course.
So we have instituted that with my daughter, and as incentive for putting money into the bank of mom and dad that pays 10% interest
Mm,
annually, I got this idea of, I mean, there have been multiple people that obviously do something very similar to
mm-hmm.
this, but I remember somebody that I met at my very first Camp 5 that I went to, Camp 5 Midwest in 2024, Stephen Woods, shout out to Stephen, said that he did this bank of mom and dad that compounds annually that pays its dividend on 1/1. So it was an extra incentive to, if your kids get like Christmas money or anything like that, to be able to have that week of delayed gratification to put the money in the bank so that you reap those bigger rewards come January 1st. So
Mm-hmm.
so that was a
Yeah,
fun one.
that's a cool concept. So what was it that Haley was, what were you talking to her about?
Yeah. So Haley, probably much like a lot of us, when it's just numbers on a spreadsheet or on a bank login, doesn't exactly seem real, right? So she
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be able to count her money. It was the whole crux of the problem is that she, I think over the summer she had a lemonade stand, and so she's got some extra cash that she hasn't thrown into the bank of mom and dad, and I've tried to encourage her to do so, and she's been a bit hesitant lately. And so I was trying to ascertain why that was the case. I knew that we were going to be having this conversation today, so I tried to do some investigative journalism to understand why she was having issues with it. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it really came down to wanting to be able to physically count the money. And so I
Yeah.
said, "Well, do I need to be able to pull it out of the bank, be able to count it, and then we can put it back into the bank?" And she said, "Well, if we count it and then we add it to that other number that she saw on the screen, that was going to be sufficient, that I wasn't going
Mm.
to have to make a withdrawal just to see it all in its glory before it goes back to the bank." So we'll
Yeah,
see
and
if it
that
actually happens in practice.
it's funny you mentioned that because whenever I was at your house last, she mentioned that to me. She told me that exact same thing that I don't remember how it came up, but your kids were talking about the bank of mom and dad and she said, "I really want to withdraw all my money." Maybe she didn't use the word withdrawal. She said take it out, something like that. And I was like, "Really? Why? Oh no, this is a red flag here." And she said, "I just want to be able to hold it and count it. And I thought it was so cute. And I thought, well, it'll be interesting to see as she gets older if she'll be more of the mindset of like wanting to actual have physical touch be a part of her financial journey in some way. Like, I don't know. Maybe like you and I, we're more spreadsheet driven, and she might not. That might not be her way of actually feeling the concept of what she's spending and saving.
Yeah, I know that you and I have talked about this previously on one of our older episodes, is just the psychology of,
Mm-hmm.
spending money. And when you're spending money that is digital, it's probably a lot easier to flow out. But the same is true really for the flip side of the coin, right? Is earning that money, it probably feels much more diminished if you just see a random digital number increase as opposed to physically seeing it in your hands. Makes it look very
Yeah.
different.
So, real quick on the Bank of Mom and Dad, I did a version of that. I just pulled it up in our spreadsheet. This is from like 10 years ago when my kids were younger. And we tried it as an incentive at one point to not necessarily to save money, but to earn money. And we tied it to schoolwork. So, whenever they got an A for a test, it was like $1, a B, maybe 50 cents or something like that. And then we did something similar where we were trying to have it grow interest. So then that was the incentive to save. So it was the incentive to earn and then the incentive to save. And I remember that for us, a couple of the kids were really doing well. Like they were knocking it out and they were getting A's, and Lori had a spreadsheet and she was trying to keep track of all the money that she owed them. And if you remember my story back in those early days, we didn't have a whole lot of money. So we were like trying to make sure that we were doing our part to actually have that money available in the bank, so to speak. And these numbers were adding up to, in some cases, I mean, $100 or more. And then we were trying to put the interest on top of that. And it was like, oh crap, we're now paying. I think we were doing 10% monthly, which
Wow.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, that was too much.
Yeah.
And before we knew it, we're like, oh shoot, we can't even afford to pay to pay our customers here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a run on Bank of Mom and Dad. There's no bailouts for
That's
the Bank
right.
of Mom and Dad from
We were
good old Uncle Sam.
That's right. We were not insured.
Well, very good. Anything else we want to say about Bank of Mom and Dad before we kind of pivot on to our next facet here?
Nope. Nope, I don't think so.
Well, one thing that I think I want to come across to the audience is that it's very intuitive, but I'll go ahead and state it, is obviously you and I are at different stages of our lives, and our kids are as well. So I think we're going to be able to attack this topic in kind of two different ways. Obviously, I found Phi prior to having any children and being in a relationship, whereas you found Phi after you had kids and
Mm-hmm.
and you guys were together. Maybe one of the first points that I would say from my point of view of raising a fire conscious family is probably a tenet that's true across all of the Phi world, is being okay with not keeping up with the joke. So a few ways that we do this is being a bit more selective about the extracurriculars that our kids participate in. We generally don't have more than one activity per kid per season. Now, I will say there are exceptions to that. My daughter right now is playing both soccer and doing gymnastics, so I would also say don't be a miser and don't be cheap about this. If you're seeing something that your kid is really passionate about, I think you should just really lean into that. But also don't feel like you have to go immediately join the club team that costs thousands upon thousands of dollars because that's what everybody around you is doing.
Yeah, I've seen both, I guess, perspectives or both extremes of that play out in my own kids. My oldest son was super passionate about basketball when he was really little. He was like probably 7 or 8 years old whenever he really took the basketball, and he was like, "This is what I want to do." And so he joined. We had him join the Y to start, which was very inexpensive. And then from there was some local, just like small leagues that were either free, and they were just kind of like bring kids together, put them on a team. And then there were some that maybe cost a little bit of money just for like a shirt and whatever. And he did that for years and continued to play until he got into junior high and made the school team. And he was super passionate about basketball. But aside from shoes and a little bit of money here and there, it didn't cost us hardly anything. And he really enjoyed it. He played it all the way through high school. And then my middle son, he was really into baseball. He started playing when he was like 4 years old at the Y and took to it. And by the time he was 8, he was excelling to the point where he was kind of heads and shoulders against the other kids that were his age. And other select teams, like you just mentioned, started taking a look at him and saying, "Hey, we want him to come over here." And I fell victim to that, where I was like, "Oh, wow, this is amazing. I want my kid to be a star, or to play at his level." And so we signed him up, and I remember it was multiple practices a week. It was a further drive. It cost a lot of money. We had to do some out of town travel. In hindsight, he didn't enjoy it as much with the same level of passion as my older son did with basketball, and it was costing us far more time and energy and money. And then at one point, there was a break in the select ball, and he went and played little league ball, and he had a blast, and he had probably more fun. It was so much more laid back. Yeah, he was probably performing at a higher level than some of the other kids were, and it was maybe not as much of a challenge for him, but it fit his personality better. And from then on, we just were very selective and very careful about, hey, we don't want to join these teams that are going to cost us thousands and thousands of dollars. And so it's all about, for me, you got to go through those criteria of how much of a time commitment it's going to be, how much of a financial cost it's going to be, but then also the personality of the child. And that's the thing that I probably didn't learn as early on as I would have liked to. In hindsight, I probably pushed a little too much for my middle son to be headed in that direction when it wasn't a good fit for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the message that I would take away from that as well is it really depends, right? That's the almost the best answer in all cases is if you have somebody that really takes to particular interests, like lean into it, allow it to continue to grow. If that does mean joining that select team, like great, like go do it. But if you're starting to see like, oh hey, I'm driving this more than they are, they're no longer interested, don't feel
Don't force it.
upset. Yeah, like exactly, don't force it. Is the same way, the analogy of how many people I would say feel like they're forced into potentially a career by the attitude from their parents, right? Is that the doctors, the lawyers, etc. Is, I mean, I know people that are in professions that they have done purely because of the reflection of really what they thought that their parents wanted them to do, and then ultimately you end up on the other side unhappy, and that either makes for a less desirable career or a pivot, which is going to be painful
Mm-hmm.
too. So,
Yep.
so another thing that we do that is along the same path of not keeping up with the Joneses is we are really okay with not running out and buying brand new things all the time. So whether that be clothes, toys, sporting equipment, etc., like we're fine with things that are secondhand, and I think that's pretty countercultural in in today's world is if it's not something brand new and shiny that I get to rip the packaging off of, well, why am I getting these secondhand things? How about you, Josh? Did you guys use secondhand items in your family?
We did to an extent. Shoes was one that we always typically bought new unless we could find like cleats or spikes for certain sports that maybe it was just had enough life left in them. But typically for basketball, it was new shoes. We for equipment it varied. And going back to the baseball versus basketball again, baseball you wouldn't think was significantly more expensive than basketball when it came to equipment. And I remember being influenced by the coaches about certain pieces of equipment, like a glove or a bat. And they were like, hey, we got to use this whatever size and weight. And it's been so long, but it was something specific on the bat that it had to say in order for it to be legal, I guess, at that age. And they were always changing the rules. And so we were like, oh, we got to buy this new bat. And every year or two, it was a new bat. And those things were expensive. They were well over $100. And then our son would find one of his teammates' bats and start using that. And we were like furious that we're like, we just spent $150 on this bat and you're using Tommy's bat. So yeah, it's one of those things that was frustrating. And we tried to we tried to purchase used equipment as much as we could, but I feel like there was, just like with anything in the world, there was a lot of influence to buy new or buy the shiny thing. So I mean, I'm proud of you guys for being able to stick to that.
Yeah, and I should say that of course my kids are much younger, so I mean the influence both from them as well as other parents, etc., coaches isn't there as much as I'm sure it will be later in life.
Yeah, watch out for that.
Yes. I mean, like obviously there's whole business models that are built on this now. The Play It
Mm.
Again Sports franchise or like Plato's Closet as
Hmm.
far as clothing and stuff like that. And that's a good segue into another thing that we have used throughout my kids' lifetime is secondhand clothes. So we have gotten clothes from. Are you familiar with the Buy Nothing Project?
Actually, only from you.
Okay, so Dawn used to be an admin for the Buy Nothing Project, and I don't remember where we first heard about it. I should ask her. But it is a way, it's a online community typically found on Facebook that allows people to both give away as well as receive things for free. And so like especially kids clothes is something you will always find out there because most of the time people are just ecstatic that someone can come take them away and it saves them a trip to Goodwill or just or just the fact that somebody is using them. Like, I mean, I know how many times our family has even taken things to a Plato's Closet or a secondhand store like that and expecting to get any money from it, and it's like, okay, I brought up 3 bags and they're gonna buy one shirt out of those 3 bags. So it's half the time we're just happy that somebody else can use the things that we put out there. And we've been really lucky because I mean you'd be shocked at the amount of things that people actually give away.
I would add to that so when my kids were young, I don't know that social media was as robust in having this type of thing available, but in recent, well, I haven't talked about it too much, I don't think, on the podcast here, but I have a granddaughter now who's a couple of months old, and I have noticed almost like an outpouring of people that everybody that I come into contact with that we say, yeah, she's whatever, 4 months old now, 5 months old. people are like, "Oh, what do you need? We've got this thing in our basement, or we've got this." I mean, across social media, but also just in person. One of the things that I didn't do well whenever my kids were younger was I thought that I needed to be, I thought that I needed to provide for everything and I needed to purchase it, which I don't know where that mentality came from. But nowadays, I feel like there's a lot more sharing out there, which is a good thing. Maybe one of the positives with regard to social media. So people, like you said, it seems like people really take to wanting to see these things go to a good home. And we've bought a few things here and there off of Marketplace lately that have been super cheap. I mean, like $10. And it's really, I don't even know that the $10 probably doesn't mean much to the person, but they are just happy to get rid of the item and see that it goes to a good home. So, yeah, I think that's a great resource that I wish I would have, I wish that would have been available to me and that we would have taken more advantage of whenever my kids were young.
Yeah. And you stole my thunder on my next point. But yeah, Facebook Marketplace is another really good, I would say, online marketplace. Like you said, I mean, you're getting things for a fraction of the cost of what they cost at retail. And to kind of go back to your previous point, yeah, I mean, I think people have this somewhat artificial stigma of thinking like, oh, if I buy something secondhand, like I should be able to provide everything and buy it myself. And like ultimately, once things are inside your four wall, people have no idea whether or not you bought it or you paid full price or you bought it for half off. I mean, even I sadly still guilty of buying things on Amazon. But one of the things that I do use when I go on Amazon, if it's something that I don't have an immediate need for, is using the website Camel Camel Camel. Have you heard of that
Mm-hmm.
one?
I have.
So, like, if I have some obscure thing and I'm like, all right, well, I want to at least go see the price analytics on this particular item, and like maybe it's $100 today, but then I see, oh, hey, basically every 3 months it goes on sale for $30. Okay, I'll wait 3 months and wait for the sale. That's a true sale as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to what it claims the price is right now.
Yeah, that's a great service.
Yes. So another way that we try and be conscious about the money that we are spending as a family is finding ways to travel more economically. So I know a habit that we are in, that I know that you are also in, is dabbling in the points and miles game.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, credit card reward hacking is what we're talking about. Myself and Don both have the Southwest Companion Pass, and so that allows us to buy one ticket and essentially get one free. I mean, you pay your taxes, which for a domestic flight is I think 560 around or one way. So you pay a whole $11.20 for a second passenger, but a great way to at least save some money on airfare.
Yeah, we do the same. We have the companion pass this year as well, and it's a great thing to have because we didn't have it last year. We had it the year before that. And we're now just really just trying to make sure that we are strategic enough to get that as long as Southwest continues to have it. And yeah, it's a huge, huge money saver.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, with my family of five, we're able, with us both having it right now, we're saving airfare for two people in our family. So only, buying three tickets as opposed to five if we're all going somewhere. Next, along with the points and miles, I will say that my family and I just took a trip to Europe for a month this summer. So obviously, you would think that costs boku dollars to make such a trip occur, but I can happily say that we didn't pay a dime for any of our flights. At least that was all in points. Now, I maybe that's a little disingenuous to say that you don't pay a dime because you do pay your annual fees for your cards and things of that nature, but definitely pennies on a dollar comparatively.
And that wasn't Southwest, right? That was another. We'll have to discuss that because we have not ventured outside of Southwest when it comes to miles or points for credit cards, other than using Chase to get hotels and things like that. We have not used or experimented with any other airline.
Yeah. So that was using Chase points, and so that was through Virgin Atlantic and Air Canada were the airlines. But yes, using the, I'm sure we'll probably talk about this in some later episode. We could spend the whole episode talking about travel hacking, but yeah, Chase points obviously the best currency out there in the game, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. And I would still consider myself an amateur or begin at the beginner stage of credit card hacking, and definitely would like to learn more. So that would be something that I think we should explore in the future.
Yeah, and I too am. I would consider myself pretty much a novice, but trying to get better with it. So yes, it was exciting to be able to feel like, hey, instead of just being in this accumulation mode for all these points, we're finally putting into practice and doing the thing that you know, the whole reason why you're going through these kind of hurdles.
Yeah.
So the next thing that I had on my list was big purchases. So we've talked about this a little bit in some of our previous episodes in regards to vehicles and housing, but I at least want to touch on that is as far as vehicles are concerned, we talked about, I guess that was just in the last episode, right? Is where we were talking about in the past of buying used vehicles, driving them basically to the proverbial wheels fall off, things of that nature. I mean, I've bought a new car in recent times, but also with the intent to drive it basically into the ground. So just the intentionality of having a purchase like that and what is the timeline for holding or still continuing to use that asset and the savings that you really reap from not having a car payment like that month over month.
Yeah, that's a big one. When we talk about finances, that's one of the big three in housing, transportation, and food. And I will say that this is one category that I think my kids I've seen at least a continuation of maybe the value that we've had, which I think is similar to yours, and that we've purchased used cars and driven them for a very long time. My kids, they all still have older cars. In fact, our daughter actually inherited like a 2007 Honda Civic from her grandmother, probably when she was 18, 17 or 18, and she's still driving it, almost close to 10 years later, 8 years later, and it has 300,000 miles on it, still going strong. And she's in no hurry to purchase a new car or a newer car. And our other kids, kind of similar stories. They have cars that are 10 plus years old, and they're, for the most part, I think, content with them. And yeah, that's been one, I think, bright spot in maybe the instilling of some of these financial values with my kids, is that even though they may not be on the path right now to financial independence and trying to pursue early retirement, they see the value in not having a car payment and not being in debt. And thankfully, I think that's, if we get at least that part right and they stay in that mindset, that'll be valuable.
That's fantastic that your kids have continued on with that path of driving cars for a longer period of time and really the superpower that gives them of the money saved from continuing to drive a paid off car like that. So. Next up, another one of the the big three, the biggest of the three, housing. So this is one that I know you and I have talked about in the previous episodes as well, but really choosing to live in really not a McMansion, more modest housing that fits our particular family. I know that maybe I struggle with this one a little bit still is obviously my kids are smaller right now. As they get older, my sons are sharing rooms at the moment. And so that is, I would say, an intention right now in the fact that the kids are able to share rooms. We use the space we have. We don't have a bunch of rooms sitting just untouched, which reduces the overall housing costs, which allows us to FI sooner. But maybe one of the things that I would say that I struggle with a little bit more is in the future, do we want to upgrade our house at all to be a bigger size? We've talked about either moving or doing an addition or things of that nature. But I think it's really just a cost benefit analysis that we'll have to do it.
Yeah, I guess to add maybe my experience to that, we have a 4-bedroom house, and it's only 4-bedroom because it was built as a 3-bedroom ranch, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and we finished our basement. And years ago, when our kids were younger, we had all 3 boys in one room for a period of time. We were in the main bedroom, Lori and I, and then our daughter had the smaller of the 3 bedrooms. And having 3 boys in one room was just too crowded. And so when we finished our basement, we went ahead and put our bedroom down there, and we have a bathroom down there. So that allowed more room for the boys to spread out. But we then gave the biggest of the 3 rooms, the old primary bedroom that we had upstairs, we gave that to the 2 boys. So they split that room. And that worked. I think that worked fine. They shared a room. There was, of course, some arguing here and there about who is the bigger slob and who made the mess and who needs to clean up and all of that kind of stuff. But for the most part, they stayed pretty, I guess it worked out fine that they were in the same room. And that was up through high school. And then when our daughter moved out, when she was 20 or 21, one of the boys took her room. So it was kind of perfect timing. And I don't know if it would work out quite that well for you because your kids are maybe just a little bit closer in age. But another point that I just thought of is I was actually listening to the Bigger Pockets Money podcast. I think it was for this week. And I heard Scott Trench mention that he had actually shared a bedroom with his brother all the way up through high school and then had a roommate when he was in college, and then immediately had roommates whenever he was post-college. And so he's a huge advocate for house hacking. So he thinks that it benefited him well having always shared a space with someone. So that might be just something that your boys, they'll have that bond if you choose to keep them in the same room for years to come until they're maybe in high school or so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with my sons, especially for the audience, I don't know that I've ever said this. My sons are twins, so they certainly are always going to have a bond either way. But yeah, it's certainly something to think about is whether or not we would want to do that. It is interesting to hear. Yeah, I hadn't heard the Bigger Pockets Money episode with Scott Trench talking about house hacking, but that makes total sense. Is like if you're so used to sharing your space through really your entire life, then I mean, why not get paid for sharing your space finally, right?
That's right.
Finally feeling like there's a benefit there on the
Yeah.
tail end of that. But no, that makes a lot of sense. So another thing that we do is for birthdays and Christmas. We don't go too crazy is the best way of putting it into a one-liner. We really try and consolidate it to 4 to 5 presents or items for each child. And there's not usually super expensive things. We've been okay with gifting secondhand items. the kids generally are fine with that as well. They just, in some cases they don't even know or they don't care. I'll use the example of my daughter. My daughter just had a birthday. All my kids' birthdays are in September. So she just had a birthday and she got a Barbie dream house. I have no idea what a Barbie dream house retails for, but we knew some friends that had a Barbie dream house that were getting rid of it, and you know it, it worked out perfectly for us. The same thing that you could go to a Facebook Marketplace or Buy Nothing Group or anything like that, and you may be lucky to find items like that as well.
I'm seeing the Barbie Dream House retail for $162 at Walmart and $199 at Kohl's.
Right. So saved myself $200 because we had maybe a conversation that you might initially feel a little, I don't know, uncomfortable about. I didn't even do it. I'll give all credit where credit is due to my fabulous wife. So much like many of these items on this list, I'll give you the peek behind the face of Oz here. Is she is the queen pulling the puppet strings on a lot of these items. So credit where credit is due.
Did you just call yourself a puppet?
Oh, I'm definitely a puppet. There is no. I'll happily be the face.
I have seen some of my friends do something similar recently who have younger kids where they'll post something on Facebook like, hey, my son is turning 4 and he's really into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Anybody have anything that they're looking to get rid of? And there's like an outpouring. Yeah, my kids are in their whatever, teens or whatever the age might be. And you can have our sheets or whatever it might be. So yeah, it's great resource.
Yeah, because I know. Did you ever watch that older documentary on Netflix, the Marie Kondo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's very good. If you haven't watched it, go spend the hour and a half or whatever. But just the general topic is around minimalism, and I forget the exact tagline is, if it doesn't spark joy, then remove it from your life. You get the get the gist.
Send it on its way.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that.
And so we've tried to use that mantra across our house. Is it really does make us feel like we have less mental stress with less physical things in our house. As counterintuitive as that may seem, I mean, it really is true. If you would look at my desk right now, it's a little untidy, and it's probably giving me a little stress as it is. So I'm sure it doesn't spark joy for other members in my household, but I should clean it up, and it will alleviate stress for all of us.
We have that in common, Elliot. If you saw the rest of my desk, it's got receipts laying everywhere, different notebooks for different things, different charging devices, a pack of gum that, well, it might even be empty. So yeah, I'm messy with my desk as well.
Yeah. Whereas I see Lori's behind you that looks pretty immaculate. So
it always is. She has her to-do list with everything checked off of it. Or it's actually empty right now because she's, I guess, completed everything.
What is that world, right? An empty to-do list. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, me either. Going back to birthdays and Christmas just for a moment, I think we share similar values there. We never really went too crazy, as you called it, with gift giving there either. And in fact, nowadays we really emphasize experiences over a gift of any sort, and we try to just be practical with gift giving. So a lot of times what we'll do, and now my kids are a little older, so they are too old for Santa Claus, and we typically will ask them, what do you need? And nowadays I feel like it's a lot of socks and underwear and things like that, and then we'll typically try to just do something as a family around that time of year as part of their Christmas gift. And same for birthdays. In fact, we were just talking about it the other day. So 2 of our kids have birthdays this month in October. And Lori said, well, we typically do $100 for a birthday gift. And it's funny because we set that price probably 10 years ago, which would have been a pretty nice birthday gift 10 years ago, but now for a 20 something, $100 doesn't go as far. And I mean, it's still probably nice to have, whether it's $100 to like for a gas card or a gift certificate or whatever it might be. But if you were to purchase something that they might need or want, it's not going to go nearly as far as it did whenever they were teenagers. But yeah, we still try to, most of the time for birthdays, we typically would just go out to lunch or dinner as a family, and then maybe try to do something that's an activity related, like go bowling, or we've done like laser tag and things like that, where it's just an experience over just another gift.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I was gonna say, you don't track your birthday gifts to the inflation numbers, the CPI or anything?
No, and it's funny because while we probably have more, or we definitely have more discretionary money available to us, we haven't raised the bar when it comes to gift giving for our kids.
Yeah, the
We're
same
still
way
set.
that you feel like you may be outraged if your wages, your annual increase didn't keep up with inflation, why we don't have the same outrage if our gift giving doesn't track the
That's
same
right.
way, right?
That's right.
So
But they
funny.
haven't complained,
Yeah,
they
no,
haven't.
of course. So another thing that we do, and this is probably true with the the fact that my kids are the age that they are right now, is frequent use of the library. So we don't have to hit every single book fair that comes out at school, which they are copious. I've never realized that that was such a thing until having kids in the schools and whatever. Like, it's a good thing to buy books. I'm not trying to say that, but we use the library quite a bit. And you can also do printing there, so you get kind of a monthly allotment. So if you want to save on a printer, or we've had printers that, like, the toner costs more than the printer does. So there's another little hack there. I know there's board games, TV. Like, if you still have an antiquated DVD player at this point, those things still do exist.
Hey, they're making a comeback. The kids love the physical copies of media.
Really?
The young adults, yeah, VHS, DVD,
Hey,
they love that stuff.
like, I have a mountain of DVDs and Blu-rays to give them, and yeah.
You can resell those nowadays. You can probably make like $20 a piece on those things.
Man, that's crazy. I think I do have like a box set of. I think being a young male at one point in my life, is I think I had bought every, or like a collectible 007 box set that has, like, I don't know, all 50 of them or whatever it is. And
Wow. That might have some value, Elliot.
yeah,
That might fund some of these other
like,
things that we're talking
straight
about.
straight to Blu-ray, or straight to eBay with my Blu-rays.
Yeah, that's right. I'm I guess disappointed to admit that we don't have a library in my small town, and it's always something that has been on the ballot for many years, and it's failed numerous times. And so we don't have a library in our backyard, and it's just something that we never really took advantage of. I mean, my kids obviously had libraries in their schools, and they would use those, and we did take advantage of the book fairs whenever they came through. But I always wish that I had access, or easy access, to a library. We can certainly go get a card in a nearby town, but there's an annual fee associated with it if you live out of the city, and it's just a little less convenient when it's 20 minutes away versus right down the street. So I always hear that libraries are a great thing, and I know that's something that's mentioned on the Choose a Five podcast all the time. They say we're friends of the library, and they've quoted so many benefits to having a library over the years, but we just haven't had that luxury, if you will.
Well, dang, I did not know that about your hometown. But yeah, I mean, Don and I even went and used the library just this week personally for us not to go even get books. It was we had to be out of our house for a short period of time, and so we grabbed our laptops, went over to the library,
Hmm.
and used. They have study rooms there, so it was during the middle of the day. So use the study rooms as just our own little escape for
Wow,
an hour.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Next, I would say having the mindset of just trying to ingrain in our children that they don't always need the latest and the greatest thing. Is I know that we talked about an example of this with. I know you were talking to some friends about the latest phone, right? Is the latest Pixel, and how they were rushing to go get it and talking about, you know, all the great things about it. But something that Don and I are trying to instill is that they don't need to have the latest and the greatest thing, and things that are new to you, even if they're a few years old, can usually give almost all of the same benefits as something that is brand new to the entire world.
Yeah, I think that's probably a really good point. Maybe that just summarizes everything that we've been talking about here with regard to material items, as not having the latest and greatest thing can be so beneficial, not only from a financial perspective but from an environmental perspective as well. And I think that is something that I've, as in a little bit of hindsight looking back on it, I think that I have instilled that in my kids to an extent. I mean, they're not trying to chase the newest iPhone, even though they are iPhone users, of course, because they wouldn't dare be an Android user like their old dad. But they all have the iPhones, and they're probably, I don't know, if I had to guess, they're probably all like 3 or 4 versions in the past. And I mean, I think maybe that's a good sign for their own future.
Of course, and you certainly wouldn't want to have that cursed blue dot as opposed to a green dot, as we've talked about.
Yeah.
So I have two other small things on my list of points, but 529 plans. Now this one, and I imagine you're gonna probably share this opinion, is college by no means is required. I think it is very much dependent on your child. It's not the right path for everybody, and so I wouldn't say go crazy on your 529, but at the same time leverage it where possible.
Yeah, my thoughts on that one, and it's just because of the situation that Lori and I were in, is that we were digging out of our own financial mess whenever the kids were young still. And it took us until really the kids were, so our oldest kids were probably close to high school age by the time we were really in a better situation where we were prepared to even think about college costs. And so we decided way back when that we were going to put ourselves, from a financial perspective, we were going to make sure that we were setting our futures up first before we made any effort to try to fund those 529 plans. So we didn't do any 529s at all. And what we did instead was we had conversations about what college would look like and what the cost could potentially be and what we could help out with. But there's a lot of other things that are available to kids that I don't know if parents don't fully understand or haven't thought through the alternatives. So in the state of Missouri, where you and I both live, there's the A+ scholarship, which 3 out of my 4 kids took advantage of. All they had to do was meet a certain grade point average and have a minimum of days days of school missed. I think there was one other one, like some community service aspect or something like that. And the first 2 years of their college could be paid for. Now it was junior college, but that's where you get a lot of your basic classes covered. And then for Lexi, our oldest, she was able to then continue to get some level of scholarship that was associated with that as she pursued her bachelor degree. And so we always just emphasize trying to find ways to hack college, whether it be going somewhere local or which is what another option that I used, which was having my employer pay for my bachelor's degree. There's just, I think, so many other ways to fund that. It's probably an episode that we could talk at great length about, is the cost of college. But yeah, totally different path that we took, I guess, than maybe what the standard is for putting money into your kids' 529s and hopefully funding that full cost of whatever it might be now, $100,000 or whatever for a 4-year bachelor's degree.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're right. Is this might be a good one to even dive in a little bit deeper. Is like, I know that, yeah, it's just a very dynamic topic right now, and I know it pairs well with obviously this one of anybody that has kids and what college really is going to look like in the future, and trying to set yourself up in whichever way that you want. I know, especially even between Dawn and myself, you know, my college was virtually paid entirely by my parents. I had a grant and maybe one small loan that was contingent with receiving that grant, but virtually, like, I mean, I left college debt free, and the superpower that that is, and that my parents really gave to me. I'm very privileged in the way that I was able to receive that, but Dawn had a very different experience where she was pretty much on her own for paying most of college, and just like I would say that you kind of set your kids up is feeling like they had skin in the game, and the benefits that you receive by, you know, not only working to have that money, but then coming out the other side knowing that you worked hard for this money and the experience that you went through was very worthwhile and was a good use of said money. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I think we could talk. I could pull up some different case studies of people, friends, and acquaintances that I have known in the past and have done just several different routes when it comes, or different paths when it comes to college. And some have come out with a degree even similar to yours, went to the same university that you did, and didn't have the support from family, but also didn't have the debt on the back end either, because of alternative choices that they made to pursue those types of degrees. So that's, yeah, I think we could talk about this more.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this one just got added to the topic list.
Yeah.
And then maybe the final point that I would bring up, and I know that I also have some rapid fire questions for us here at the end, but is just the overall topic of how much kids cost to raise, right? You know, the number that I always used to hear thrown out was, oh, it costs $1 million to raise a kid to age 18, right? And I don't know, did you spend $4 million to raise your kids?
There's no way I even earned $4 million while my kids were growing up. So yeah, I mean, definitely not.
Right.
No, there's no way.
Yeah, and not to say that there's anything wrong that if you choose to spend $4 million or $1 million on each of your kids, so be it. Like, that's your choice, that's your intentionality. But where I was going with this whole line of thinking is, it's all based on your own values and how you spend money. Is the same way that being on the financial independence path is countercultural, so is spending less money on child rearing, is what it comes down to at the end of the day. Is like, I know I saw a clickbait headline the other day that 5 million is the new number for retirement, and I just had to sit there and chuckle. It's like, yeah, says who? Like,
right.
Why isn't it 10 million or 20 million? Or
Yeah.
so that would be my point on these arbitrary numbers that are thrown out to say, yeah, hey, this is how much it costs to raise a kid.
I actually never heard the number that high, $1 million to raise kids, and maybe that's because I'm I'm going back to when my kids were younger, and I for whatever reason, I remember 300,000 being the number to raise a kid, and maybe that was what I heard 20 years ago. I don't know, but I would say it's definitely all relative. My kids, we used a lot of these same tactics that you mentioned here. We tried to keep our costs as low as we possibly could, especially once we found our way to financial independence and or onto that path. And we tried to instill good values by doing these things for ourselves, like you mentioned, not always having the latest and greatest, living in a modest home, driving used vehicles, and then trying to encourage them to make the same choices. And definitely did not come anywhere close. I couldn't even, I doubt that I spent $1 million across 4 kids, and they're all, for the most part, just fine.
You miser. Well, you need to go back
Yeah.
and listen to that cheap versus frugal episode, Josh.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's wrap up with some rapid fire questions here. What would be a money lesson that you would want your kids never to forget?
Stay out of debt.
Yeah, that's a good one.
How about you?
Yeah, no, I think I would echo that. Is just how incendiary or incid. I'm gonna use a different word.
Just leave it in,
Yeah,
Elliot. Don't
no,
even cut this part out.
just how terrible debt really is consumer debt, financial debt, buying a house or a car that you can't afford.
Mm-hmm.
That is just not a good thing.
Yeah.
What's the biggest financial mistake you hope that your kids would avoid?
Divorce
Yeah, I can believe
was the
that.
costliest financial mistake that I ever made.
Sure. Yeah, choosing a partner. I think I heard this on Mindy and Carl's podcast at one point in time, was the biggest financial decision that you'll ever make is who you get married to.
Yeah,
If
I
you
agree.
choose to get married.
Yeah. What, do you have a different answer for that one?
See, I'm getting all the benefits of hindsight from you, so everything that you say, I'm just like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good one. Yeah, I mean, I think married with that first answer of avoiding debt, yeah, I mean, finding a partner that you're truly aligned with,
Mm-hmm.
the financial implications of that are so far outreaching, even any debt that you have, because hey, turns out you just split that debt, whether you incurred it or not. So
Yeah.
yeah, hard to say anything but that.
Mm-hmm.
So if your kids were to achieve fire before 30, what would you tell them?
Oh man, I'd be like, that's amazing. You did great. And I guess I would just make sure that I would encourage them to know themselves and kind of know what they want to do with their time. Because if they no longer need to work, what would they do? I mean, being 30, maybe they're at the stage in their life where they're having kids, and that would be great. They could devote a lot of time to that. But if they don't know what their next step is going to be and are just, I don't know, I guess, of course they could explore and try to figure that out, but they probably need to do that before if they were leaving their careers behind, they would need to try to maybe think about that before then.
Sure. Yeah, I think for me here, yeah, is really know thyself more than anything else. I mean, 100% would want to be overjoyed for them and that accomplishment that they achieved. But more than anything is to remember being humble and that you got to this place because of the lessons that you were taught, and most people in this world aren't taught those things. It's not some superpower that you had or some tremendous thing that you did. I think at least that's the way that I feel about once I eventually reach fire, and I'd be interested to hear what you think, but it's not rocket science. It is just finally being presented with this clear information and applying it appropriately. How
Yeah,
would you think?
I agree completely. Yeah, it's very well said.
Finally, what would be a family splurge that you will always say yes to?
I think really the first thing that comes to mind is just a fun dinner and or experience out together. And those are things that don't cost a ton of money in the grand scheme of things, but that's probably when we do the best bonding. And of course, my kids are much older now, so getting them all together is a challenge. But if we're all able to just go somewhere and enjoy each other's company, that usually is something that I do not hesitate to make sure that everybody has everything that they want. And if they want to get desserts or extras or whatever, like, enjoy on me, have fun. And that's something that I think this isn't rapid fire. I'm taking a little longer on this one, but this is something that I remember other family members doing for us, for Lori and I. Whenever we would visit them, they'd be like, "Hey, let's go out to dinner, get whatever you want." It just felt like a very, very nice thing to do, and it's something that we appreciated. So we've tried to pass that along to our kids.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head on that one too. And I'll probably be a little long-winded here too. Is one of my, I would say, my fondest memories is having these neighborhood meals every Sunday with multiple families in our neighborhood, and we got together, we sat around the pool, we had appetizers, we had a meal together, you know, parents had drinks, stuff like that. Is that bonding of food and experience and that community. I mean, I think that's the secret sauce for anything, is just having the opportunity to fill your body with good food and then have deep conversation, or doing any kind of fun activity where you're just spending time around people that you love. Is I mean, what more can you ask for?
Yeah, like you said, drinks for the adults or parents.
That's
That
right.
makes
Well,
things easier.
I'm looking forward to ours later tonight with the St. Louis crew for the local Choose FI meetings. So
Yep.
looking forward to it.
Should be fun.
Yep. All right, Josh. Well, to our audience, it's been great as always. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you're listening to us on YouTube or on a podcast player of your choice, if you could like, subscribe, give us a comment, we'll do our best to respond. And otherwise, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Elliot. See you
Thanks,
later.
Josh.